Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, County Council overrides a Mark Elrich veto for the fourth time. What will happen to White's Ferry now that its deal has fallen through? And will the Trans Equity Act pass the General Assembly and become law? Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by a former House of Delegate member, attorney Maricé Morales, and president of the Montgomery County Federation of Republican Women, Laurie Halverson. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. For local political observers like the 21 This Week crew, how fun was it to watch the dynamics this week between the county executive and the newly expanded county council? That tug of war, that overpower, just is fun to watch. The incumbent county executive, Mark Elrich, won re-election by the narrowest of margins in the Democratic primary. Some would say that it was a sign of strength, others a sign of weakness. For highly carnivorous politicians, that opens a question. It's like ringing the dinner bell for a pack of jackals. On the other side, the county council has grown and has multiplied from seven, and with 7 new members elected for a first term, there's jostling going on over whose members, is going to get as the members stake out their political territories. Laurie, county government is still trying to clean up the mess created last summer when the 5-member planning board was forced to resign en masse. There are those that view the veto of the appointment of Mr. Hedrick to the Planning Commission to be a signal from the county exec that he wants to have a greater role in the development process, which typically is of the province of the council. One headline actually read, "Elrich to council, I still matter." So is this political gamemanship being played out on the pages of Montgomery County 360?
I think there is a lot of political gamemanship going on. If you remember early on during our legislative session, there was discussion about Ben Kramer's bill, which would have given less power to the county council and more power to Mark Elrich. So Mark is, trying to set his stage here. And I think this is part of it. James Hedrick, I watched his interview with the county council and thought if I was a Democrat, I would be very happy with him. He seemed extremely,
maybe that's the problem, Laurie. Maybe that's the problem with him.
I know. Well, he loves density and he wants cars off the road. So he is a dream for the county council members. And, I think it also something that Mark Elrich should be happy with too, but I think he just wants to shake it up a little bit. He after talking to him for 2 hours, he decided he was going to veto him. And, he seems to be very, very knowledgeable about affordable housing and things like that.
I agree.
So.
Well, it didn't work out very well since the council overrode the veto on an 11-0 unanimous vote. Yes. When Mr. Hedrick was only approved by an 8-3 vote. So Maricé, it's been reported again, oftentimes, that Mr. Elrich doesn't take the time to cultivate coalition supportive policy objectives. So are these disagreements going to be harder to find compromise on between the council and the county executive? Or will there even be any disagreements since they seem to be all coming from the same political perspective?
No, I think that, in terms of Mark's veto, I think it was just really a resounding affirmation of that he does think that he should have a little bit more say. But as you state, I think that as the county council members all came together to support Hedrick, I think that shows that we're ready to move on. We see that Mr. Hedrick was the former chair of the Rockville housing enterprises. He understands, density, he understands. And when it comes to affordable housing, most of, if not all, of the council members who are brand new and ran on Thrive, for example, are in his corner. So I think that, if I was the executive, I would have, even if I were not a fan of Mr. Hedrick, I would have really just kind of created a kumbaya moment. But there are different leadership roles. And I would say there's also the other dynamic of it being Sherry Branson, a Black woman who was running for the same position. So I also understand that there was a pre-division, but once that Mr. Hedrick came through as the favorite, then I thought that the council members were smart in kind of protecting each other and working together so that there could be some kind of coalition building or some step forward as we finally approve, all the members of the planning board.
Yeah, well, and with Thrive, that's something I didn't mention, I meant to mention. Thrive 2050, I think all of the planning board members, except maybe, I'm not sure if the Republican will be supporting it, but they're all going to be in lockstep with each other on that, because they wouldn't have appointed people who did not support Thrive 2050, since that's what the county council voted for. So, so that's a shame. I wish there were a little bit more even understanding of it, because I think a lot of people don't want Thrive 2050 and they haven't listened to the.
Well, I mean, Arlington County is you got to, if you look across the river at Arlington County, what they're doing with the missing the middle, I mean, they are very aggressive in increasing their density, and it's very similar to Thrive, but not exactly the same. Anyway, we'll continue to watch the ongoings at the county council just for our own amusement, if for nothing else. So I want to shift to another topic, which is, White's Ferry. Ferries have been a traditional means of transportation since the dawn of man for moving cargo across rivers, lakes, and other bodies of water. Before the building of the Chesapeake Bridge, I can remember, that shows you how old I am, it was a ferry that carried passengers across to the eastern shore. And even further down in Delaware, the Cape May to Lewis ferry linking New Jersey and Delaware continues to run. Locally, early travelers who wanted to cross the Potomac into Virginia have taken a ferry known as White's Ferry between the states. It's not a very large ship or boat, if you want to call it that. It's a rather small operation. And now financial considerations have forced the owner to sell or shut down. And a last-minute effort to save the ferry, to sell it to a private developer, has failed. Maricé, it's looked at that the state of Maryland might be the ultimate survivor and purchase the vital link between Montgomery County and Loudoun County, Virginia. Well, what do you think?
No, I think that it was kind of, I was impressed by the coalition that was built, because it's my understanding that the first purchase, or the offer to purchase, was at 1.1 million between the folks in Virginia, so Loudoun County, Montgomery County, as well as the original owners. And I think right now the fight is not about having a flat fee. It's been a while since I took real property, Casey, but it's my understanding that on the Virginia the side, there's an offer from the current Rockland owners, the family, I believe it's Ms. Devlin, is offering to have a permanent easement, but more based on the density or the flow of cars. Right. So, it's getting really technical in terms of real property, but it looks like, there has been some consensus as to, whether it's going to be for public use, and so that Marylanders and Virginians can continue to use that area.
Well, it really comes down to dollars and cents, I think, as to what's going to happen. But Laurie, there are those that are proposing an alternative opinion that the state should look to develop the outer Beltway crossing, linking Route 28 in Maryland and Virginia, and do away with the ferry. Let's get into the 21st century here and build a roadway. Build a bridge.
Yeah. So the ag reserve, that's the issue. It's right there.
Oh, that's the alleged issue.
Well, I mean, they're so strongly guarding the ag reserve for good reason. And so there's so many passionate people. They're gonna fight it if there's going to be anything that's going to go through their ag reserve. But I think what if there's something in it for the ag reserve? If they built a small bridge, that's what I think. Maybe we should get input from the ag reserve. But what if a solution would be to build a small bridge and then charge a toll, and a portion of that toll would go toward the ag reserve in some way. And maybe there would be some agreement on that. It would still keep the traffic small if the toll was high enough, but it would also help the ag reserve. So that's I think a happy medium. We still need something better than that, though, somewhere else to give people another option besides the American Legion.
Well, they need to have a reliable means of transportation. I mean, yeah. let's face it, there are bottlenecks that prevent you from crossing, and to have something like White's Ferry or an alternative bridge would be a wonderful development if we could. It
would. I mean, and just to go back to a ferry, I mean, come on, we don't need a ferry. We can put a little bridge there. What's the problem with that? Let's get up with the times.
Well, Laurie, I agree with you totally. I never liked Joni Mitchell. I'm willing to pave Paradise and build a bridge there. So let's do that instead.
Yeah, I mean, I've never taken the ferry, and and I feel kind of bad that I didn't even do that before. But I would, I've heard that's a really good way to go. It helps save time. So if we had a road, that would save even more time.
I agree. When we come back from this short break, if the trans equity bill is passed, how will it change lives in Maryland? Stay tuned. Welcome back. Our next topic, which is whether the General Assembly will expand Maryland Medicaid to pay for gender-affirming care and procedures for transgender patients, is one that needs to be treated with great sensitivity and respect. There are strong opinions on both sides of the debate, and because of the subject, I want to present to you, our audience, for awareness and consideration. It's a topic that is in the headlines of many states and nationally. So let's talk about what we are in Maryland approaching. Maricé, there seems to be several avenues of discussion regarding this legislation. Is gender-affirming care necessary? Should it be covered by Medicaid? Will it be available to children and minors? And is parental consent and participation required? As a former member of the House of Delegates, let's just focus first on whether gender-affirming care is necessary and appropriate, and is Medicaid the right funding mechanism for the program?
Thank you, Casey. Yes, actually, in 2014, when I was still a member of the legislature, we passed what was then the Senate Bill 212, the Fairness for All Marylanders Act, which identified transgender people as a protected class. And we basically just said, the Maryland Constitution and our services and all of our tax paid for programs should not discriminate transgender folks in housing, employment, public accommodations, and credit. So all of this, what this new bill does, it just adds healthcare so that Medicaid, as you correctly stated, Casey, could then cover for certain gender affirming procedures and treatments. Now, the question you asked is if the procedures are necessary, but this bill does not say all transgender children should go and get reaffirming treatments. What it's saying is that for an individual who is 16 and above, should be able to get Medicaid coverage for such treatments. And so when it comes to this specific population, we know through our science, not through opinion, but through science and social science assessments, that this is a demographic that is has a high propensity for suicide. So anything that we can do as Marylanders to close the gap in insurance care in terms of coverage, I'm all for it. And I'm very proud to have been part of the original cohort of folks that stood up for transgender Marylanders. And now seeing my colleagues such as Ann Kaiser and Bonnie Cullison to continue this work, I couldn't be more proud.
Well, thank you. Laurie, you obviously come from a different perspective because you testified in opposition to the bill. So explain why, please.
Yes, I represented the Montgomery County Federation of Republican Women in my testimony. And I found out that, I was concerned that it's actually discriminatory against everyone but transgender people. But the state's attorney general, from what I understand, has stated it's not discriminatory for them to have transgender care. However, I don't buy that argument. The bill would allow transgenders to store their sperm or eggs, but not anyone else. That Medicaid would pay for them, but not for anyone else. It also would change your, if you're, for example, a man who's bald, you could have hair transplant done to give yourself hair as a woman. And you know, what if you're a bald man and you're not transgender, you can't get care covered by Medicaid. It also covers facial alterations, which means plastic surgery. Like if you want high cheekbones, like Caitlyn Jenner, you can have Medicaid cover that. But if I wanted high cheekbones, I will not be covered by Medicaid for that. So I don't think it is fair for all people. It favors transgenders. I'm sorry, but that's how I feel. And I think that it is discriminatory against everyone but transgender people. I do have compassion for them, but I think that healthcare should be equal to all, using, you know, circumstances that, I mean, you have to look at what's medically necessary. I don't think it's medically necessary to get high cheekbones. You know, that doesn't make sense. Also, I was concerned about the children. It looks like this will open the door, this bill will open the door for more children to have gender affirming care. And, you know, most studies have shown that, a lot of studies show that most children change their mind when they become adults. So I don't think it's in there, and there's no therapeutic approaches that are evidence-based. So there's not enough data out there that really shows that therapeutic care will actually help that person. And if you look at the suicide rate, it's still extremely high for these people. They need care, but it's I'm not sure that for children this is the right kind of care. And I know that
I want to thank you, Laurie.
Yeah.
I don't mean to cut you off, but
Go ahead.
we need to explore some of the things that you just brought up, which is there is a division of opinion in the scientific community between what is appropriate care and at what age. The AMA guidelines, you know, does recognize gender dysphoria, and it says that as determined by shared decision making between patient and physician, these are medically necessary and outlined by generally accepted standards of medical and surgical practices. Whereas the Endocrine Society currently recommends that transgender youth wait until the age of 18 to get genital surgery and shouldn't start gender affirming hormones prior to the age 16. Maricé, you mentioned in your answer that the law is targeted not to start until someone reaches the age of 16. So does this open the door to other minors having care or not?
It wouldn't change anything that under the guidelines and licensing procedures for for any medical professional to follow. So it doesn't, just expanding access to gap coverage under Medicaid, state Medicaid, does not change what's already best practices and what would be a decision between a practitioner and their patient and their parents. So in other words, if there's a federal guideline as to folks under the ages of 16 and a parent needs to be in the room or needs to be part of the process, then nothing changes that. This is just an expansion in the state Medicaid program. And that's because we understand that the transgender community is highly exposed to being rejected, harassed, and discriminated by society. So for someone who wants to have high cheekbones for aesthetic reasons, that's not what an individual who has been born into a sex that they don't identify with will be suffering from by being discriminated, rejected, or harassed in the workplace or in public spaces. So I continue to make the same argument that just expanding the coverage that what Medicaid has right now in the state of Maryland will not create these new new avenues for children to be forced into a procedure that they don't want to have with the support of their parents, without the support of their parents.
Well, I want to clarify something that you said, Maricé, and I don't know who's best to answer this. The real key here, and the real fear that people have, is that minors will be able to enter into gender affirming care without parental consent and without parental knowledge. Will this bill open that Pandora's box?
Yeah.
Either one of you. I don't know who is best.
Yeah, and I don't know, but I think what's most important is I think that the legislators are so worried about looking insensitive that they're not looking at the facts and like if you look at the fiscal notes, it just stares at. I mean, it's going to be so much more expensive. It will add a significant amount to Medicaid expenditures. We can't afford this right now. I mean, this is ridiculous that they don't even seem to have read the fiscal notes. There's so much information in there and I'm sure that there's even more that could be said, but I just am very concerned about this.
Well, I mean, fiscal considerations are important, but I think also people recognize that if there is a legitimate need for healthcare, that we try to find a way to provide it. There seems to be, however, a large debate also surrounding gender affirming care as to the best approach that is taken in providing that health care. So I appreciate both of you joining this difficult topic. And so stay tuned for parting shots when we come back from this short break. And welcome back now with parting shots, Maricé Morales.
Yes, as March is coming to a close, just want to salute all of the women who lead here in Maryland, and just really happy that today, actually, Governor Wes Moore had a proclamation signed this morning, making March 31st the Maryland Transgender Day of Visibility. And I'm just really, really, really proud to be a Marylander and to have served with so many of the champions of some of the transgender kind of milestones in terms of protections that we have in the state of Maryland. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you. Laurie Halverson, your parting shot.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but it's been a tough week for me as a Republican, and I really think a lot about children, especially this week. I mean, the shootings in Nashville. There's so many things that children are exposed to that we didn't have to deal with when we were children. Drag queen shows, books about sex in elementary school. There's a general hate for Trump. And I think that hate has been normalized for a lot of people. And so children think that they can hate in other ways now, which, I mean, we're seeing that. It's hard to know, how do we handle this? How do we help the children?
Well, thank you, Laurie. We won't be on the air next week. I want to thank you again, both for participating today. I want to thank the audience for tuning in. I'm Casey Aiken.